Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of the Echo from the Buttes podcast. I am your host, David Howman, joined by some trusty co-hosts. We've got our final four in March here. It's myself, Andrew Hazlett, Austin Bundy, and Tom Harden. Of course, we are in the thick of it in March Madness. For those that aren't watching on YouTube, Austin is wearing his Guard U shirt. I have a kind of vintage ASU basketball shirt that I found on discount at the ASU bookstore a couple of years ago. Andrew and Tom, you guys are not in the basketball spirit, clearly.
I don't have any basketball merch. I got to fix that.
I like racing. I'm wearing a racing shirt.
I'm repping hockey for those who aren't watching on YouTube.
Yeah, you got the hockey hat on. We got to get you guys some basketball merch, though.
I'll get right on it.
Do you guys, I know, David, you probably were the only one who were there when this was a thing. Andrew, I don't know if this is still a thing, but remember the Sun Devil Rewards app?
I remember that.
It does not exist, I think. At least to my knowledge. I can go on the App Store real quick.
That's where I got this shirt through, was I collected enough pitchforks doing their stupid little daily tasks and got a free Guard U t-shirt out of it.
You know, I'll be honest, and this is gonna be like humble brag, I guess. I had two different student jobs at ASU while I was there. One, I was a student worker for the Alumni Association, and then I was also an RA in the dorm. So between those two, I got a lot of free shirts. I didn't get a free Guard U shirt. That one I did have to pay for, but when you factor in all the other savings that I had throughout my 6 years total at ASU, because I went for my master's too. Don't think that it just took me that long to complete my bachelor's.
Super senior David Howman.
And but I did save a lot on shirts during my time.
That's what we call leveraging.
Exactly. Yes, it was a power move.
He took advantage of his COVID year.
Took a red shirt year as well.
Yeah, took a red shirt, medical red shirt.
Trip year.
Yeah, you know, these days it's kind of common, so you never really know. But
on Austin's point, the Sun Devil Rewards app does not exist anymore, unfortunately, on the App Store.
Andrew, you also don't know what Camp Fargo is.
I don't.
Oh.
Did that go away?
Oh, yeah.
When did that go away?
That went away in, it was while we were in school, Austin. It was I don't know, I want to say 2017?
No way. It went away in 2017. I was part of 942 crew. How did I, miss that Camp Fargo went away?
It didn't technically, it kind of was sort of still there, but whenever ASU switched to the athletics fee, where everybody got tickets because they already paid for it, kind of thing.
Well, no, I remember Camp Fargo because they did that my freshman year, 2015, that everybody, because of the athletics fee, got tickets no matter what. You just had to claim them. But
right.
Camp Fargo was still a thing because you camped out in order to get the first 2 or 3 rows of the end zone in the student section, or you camped out to get the first 5 rows at the basketball games.
Right, but they were doing that still, but then they slowly phased it out. So it was, I guess it might have been 2019 now that I'm thinking about it, because I feel like I remember it ended during the Herm Edwards era, which feels in retrospect very right. Not that I think Herm Edwards had anything to do with it, let alone knew about it.
That we know of.
Apparently there were a lot of things going on with that program he definitely didn't know about.
I remember Camp Fargo for the Notre Dame game and just seeing the line for tickets there.
Yeah.
In the words of Mark Jackson, what happened to the game I love?
We used to be a proper country.
Yeah, well, changes with Camp Fargo and everything. There's changes all over. Obviously, the big change with ASU right now is the changing of the guard at the basketball, in the leadership for the basketball program. The coach, Bobby Hurley, is out. Technically, he's still with Arizona State through June, but not in a coaching capacity. And they've been kind of doing their search, and there's been a few developments recently. There hasn't really been any hard set news, but all signs at this point seem to be pointing towards Randy Bennett out of St. Mary's being at the very least the top target, the guy that they're going after. there was a report from Chris Cartman with Sun Devil Source and 24/7 Sports where he said that Randy Bennett is seriously considering the job, and since then others have come out and they've said the same thing, that they've been really pushing to get a deal done with Bennett. It kind of sort of feels like reading the tea leaves may be some news, could even be some news between the time that we finish recording this podcast and when it goes out. So if he's already been announced as the next head coach, take this for a grain of salt or whatever. How does everybody feel about Randy Bennett? Because I know online I've seen a lot of mixed sentiment, but I know at least two of us have talked in the past about wanting Randy Bennett to be the coach before there was even an opening. But how is everybody feeling at this point?
For me, I like the local ties. He is a Mesa native, and I believe his parents are here, so the desire to move back and be closer to family is certainly a big draw for him. Makes a lot of sense. You want to have somebody who is grounded within the community to be able to appeal. And I'm gonna tap the sign again. Activate the Valley. That's the mantra that's been going across all of Sun Devil athletics for the last few years. And who better really to do that than somebody who grew up here in the Valley and knows the various fan bases and how to engage across the board. The only drawback that I will say to Randy Bennett is not exactly the younger candidate that I would have envisioned having. Somebody who's more in tune with navigating the NIL landscape and the transfer portal and everything that comes with it. But at the end of the day, I think the strong local ties does carry more weight with being able to get the program, get a lot of momentum behind the program and get people excited about it, and turn Tempe into maybe not the destination in college basketball, but a destination worth considering.
Yeah, I think I'm with Tom on that one. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about his body of work, but considering St. Mary's is one of those perennial names you hear when it comes to March Madness in the NCAA tournament, it's constantly being mentioned in a dogfight with Gonzaga for the WCC titles. I'll take Randy Bennett right now, barring any other younger, splashier name that potentially comes up here. Just because if you just think about the transfers that might come over with him from St. Mary's, not just from St. Mary's in general, but maybe some of the other WCC schools or some of the other mid-majors who had gems that were thinking of jumping to a St. Mary's after this season and now may switch their allegiances to ASU if he ends up in Tempe. On a separate note, I do believe with Gonzaga leaving for the Pac-12, and if Bennett leaves St. Mary's for ASU, I believe we're witnessing the death of the WCC in college basketball, just because there's not a whole lot. I mean, a lot of people are like, why would Randy Bennett leave St. Mary's when Gonzaga's leaving? Like, St. Mary's could dominate the WCC. Well, without Gonzaga, the WCC is nothing, regardless of how good St. Mary's is going to be, because that conference now drops below the Mountain West in relevance. St. Mary's will not get the same credit it has previously gotten for playing in the same conference as Gonzaga. It's going to end up in a similar situation as Miami of Ohio did this year, in that they could have some of the greatest regular seasons possible, but because they didn't play Gonzaga twice and probably split with them, that resume is nowhere near as good as it should be. And that's going to go across the board for the WCC. So I would be shocked if we saw more than one representative from that conference in any future tournament going forward.
Yeah, and not only is Gonzaga leaving, which that's obviously the headline, but also Oregon State and Washington State have been in the West Coast Conference last couple of years. They'll be in the Pac-12 next year. So they're losing their best team. They're losing 3 teams total. So the size of the conference is shrinking and the prestige is dropping off considerably. So I think that's well put, especially in light of all of the narratives that Miami of Ohio faced this year too. I mean, Randy Bennett has had St. Mary's in the tournament the last 5 years in a row. 3 of those times they've advanced to the second round, and they've done a lot of that without always winning the conference tournament. and it's because their resume was good enough to get an at-large bid despite not winning the West Coast. Without Gonzaga, that's probably not going to happen. It's going to be you either win your conference tournament or good luck in the NIT. So I don't think that's. I know a lot of people have said, well, why? Like his road to the tournament just got easier. I don't think that's necessarily a positive for him. Meanwhile, you look at Arizona State, and it's not exactly a place where basketball coaches come to elevate their standing. But at the same time, Big 12 had 8 teams in the tournament this year. They've had at least 7 teams the last few years. You really only need to be in that, get to the top half of this conference to be firmly on the bubble, if not better. Obviously, it's much harder to win in the Big 12 than the West Coast, but I think there's a more direct path to the tournament starting next year in the Big 12 versus in the West Coast.
He also doesn't need to win the Big 12. He could also just get Arizona State back to the tournament. He just needs to get Arizona State back to the Sweet 16. And regardless of what you want to say about loyalty to programs, I mean, that elevates his stock. That gets eyeballs on him and what he can do with a program, and can potentially jump to whatever Big 10 or SEC school needs their own rebooting or their own successor.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you said, David. Do you want to be a big fish in a small pond or a little fish in the big pond? And based on the reasons you said, David, I think it's a smart move for him. For ASU, I don't know. His age concerns me a little bit. You look at the recent hires for ASU across the board. Kenny Dillingham, younger guy, first go-around. JJ Van Neal, younger guy, first go-around. Molly Miller, it wasn't her first go-around, but she's still on the younger side. Bennett's on the older side. He up there in age. How long is he going to be at ASU even before he retires? 5 years? For me, I'd rather go get a coach of the future that you can ideally have 10, 20, 30 years possibly if you get it right. I think that would be the best option, but I'm not as in tune with who's on the board compared to you all. But if there's not that option that you love, then go get a Randy Bennett.
Well, and I mean, to your point, I think a lot of people have talked about his age and questions about how long is he going to be the coach here. Randy Bennett will turn 64 later this year. So he is up there in age, especially compared to a lot of the other coaches that Arizona State has right now. Now, that being said, can he coach another 10 years? Potentially. There are a handful of coaches in the tournament right now that are all over 70 years old. Rick Pitino, Tom Izzo, Rick Barnes at Tennessee, and somebody else that I'm totally blanking on right now. Coach K was working well into his 70s before he retired. It's not unheard of to get into your 70s as a basketball coach these days. And I really don't think that a guy like Randy Bennett, who could easily, if he thinks he only has a few years left, he could easily stay put at St. Mary's. His legacy there is secure. I don't think that if he really thinks he's only got a couple years left, that he would make this move and come to anywhere, let alone a program that is going to take some building and is going to be a challenge, if he doesn't think he's got a lot left in the tank. To that point, right now at St. Mary's, his associate head coach is a guy by the name of Mickey McConnell, who, like Randy Bennett, grew up in Mesa, and he played for Bennett at St. Mary's. He's a third generation coach. His dad coaches at Mesa, at Dobson High. His grandfather has the most wins in Arizona high school basketball history. This is another guy that is an Arizona native through and through, has strong ties. And Mickey McConnell's only 36 years old.
Well,
so
there's
definitely the potential McConnell replaces Bennett at St. Mary's, or he could come with him and kind of be that groomed to be the successor.
David, you brought up the hypothetical that I was trying to outline is, if McConnell was to follow Bennett over, and if it's kind of a planned ascendancy for McConnell to get his head coaching opportunity. There's all these variables that go into it. Bennett's not even officially the head coach. We can speculate all day long, but if this ends up being a short-term situation, short-term I say 5 to 7 years, and there's a plan in place for McConnell to have, not only be that top assistant, but have that decision making ability where he is, almost, he's the head coach, head coach in waiting. That's a situation that I could see playing out.
I mean, it worked so well for Utah this this past cycle, no, I think that that's definitely something that could potentially happen. And even if, say, McConnell does stay put and take the St. Mary's job and he just gets promoted there, that also doesn't mean that in 10 years or when Bennett retires at Arizona State, again, assuming that he is the next head coach, that doesn't mean that they can't then go to Mickey McConnell, who has 10 years of coaching experience in the West Coast, and say, hey, you want to come coach at Arizona State? You want to also come back home? Look how well it went for your mentor.
Hopefully with a couple national championships to lure him here too.
Right. Yeah. No. It'll be it'll be much more competitive that time around. I think I think a lot of people. Another thing I've seen a lot of people not love about Randy Bennett is this idea that he should have done more already to this point in his career. They saw St. Mary's get bullied by Texas A&M in this last tournament game. They see that he hasn't advanced past the round of 32 since 2010 when he took St. Mary's to the Sweet 16. And I've seen people say like, well, he's not never really been a Cinderella team. Like, why are we going after somebody who's this is what they're saying. Why are we going after someone who's old and doesn't win in the tournament? To which I say, he gets to the tournament. He gets to the tournament consistent. He's had more tournament appearances and more tournament wins in the last 5 years than Bobby Hurley had in 11 years at Arizona State. And he did that at St. Mary's. He did that without elite NIL resources. He's never had a recruiting class that's ranked higher than 60. He finds hidden gems. He finds guys that fit into his system and turns that team into a really competitive team that, they're not going to be able to win every tournament game that they're in. But that's also kind of exactly what you kind of look for in mid-major coaches. Like, it's somebody who can take a program that isn't going to have 4 stars and 5 stars, but they're still able to get to the tournament. They're occasionally able to make some noise. Ben McCollum, who's now the head coach at Iowa and just took down Florida right before we hopped on to record this, simultaneously destroying my bracket, completely setting it up in flames. Ben McCollum did that at 2 different jobs before getting the Iowa job, and has had a tremendous first year at Iowa. Bucky McMillan, who just beat Randy Bennett at Texas A&M, he had a couple really good years at Samford, but like he didn't really make any real noise in the tournament at Samford. He just did enough to show you he's a legitimate coach. Put him at a place like Texas A&M, which has more resources than Samford. Arizona State doesn't have elite resources available to basketball, but they do have more than St. Mary's. So I think that's exactly what you look for in a coach. Is he built St. Mary's pretty much from the ground up. He's had almost as many tournament appearances in his time at St. Mary's as the program had their entire history before hiring him. That's how good he's been relative to the program history.
I do have
No
to.
disagreement from me.
Sorry, I just came in just a few minutes late. So basically, I have some thoughts on hiring of Bennett, which Arizona State men's basketball, after letting go of Bobby Hurley for 11 seasons, they need some sort of the Molly Miller magic, like what I've seen on the women's basketball side, in which they have ended the season on Thursday night in a heartbreaking loss to Virginia, who went on to advance to the round of 32 after taking down Georgia in an upset. But after hearing your analysis on Randy Bennett's impact on St. Mary's men's basketball, I'm pretty interested to see how you could change the winning culture for Arizona State men's basketball and bring it back to where it used to be, or go further up to where they want to go. So that's what I have the thoughts on hiring Bennett.
Right. Well, and a lot of people have since this coaching search popped up, everyone says like, well, we need to find the next Molly Miller, and Molly Miller is younger. She's definitely more energetic than Randy Bennett, just from a personality standpoint. So I understand why people would look at Randy Bennett and say he's not the next Molly Miller. It also does not help his case, I think, that he looks very, very similar to Herb Sendek, who also is in the West Coast and just had a really good year at Santa Clara. If you told me that the two were brothers, I would fully believe you.
Literally.
But again, Molly Miller, I mean, she's young, but she was at Drury for 6 seasons and had a lot of success there at the D2 level. She was then at Grand Canyon for 5 years. So like she was experienced, and when she came to Arizona State, she brought a culture of success.
Definitely.
Like when she told players, "Here's how you win," they believed her because she's got all these wins on her record. Same thing with Randy Bennett. And I think the fact that Randy Bennett, you know, in a lot of ways, he's been kind of like college basketball's version of Matt Campbell at Iowa State. You know, he doesn't have elite resources. All he does is win consistently at a place that didn't win before him. And all these schools every year, it's like, who's going to be the one to get Matt Campbell out of Iowa State? Suddenly it happened, and Penn State was the one who got him. And like for Arizona State to be the one to get Randy Bennett out when so many other programs have come calling over the years, I think that says something about where the university is. I think that says something about the leadership under Graham Rossini, the athletics director. And I think it speaks to the potential for the program that Randy Bennett, again, if he takes the job, we don't know what's going to happen
We
yet.
have to wait and see, honestly.
But a lot of things look like they're pointing that way. But also, this is the same program that, you know, hired June Jones for 12 minutes and then
For
reverse
12
course.
minutes, that's literally insane. But I do have to add in as well, so since Graham Rossini has taken over the Arizona State athletics program, he has hired Jamia Jackson to take over women's tennis, and look where they are, which it has been pretty impressive. I do remember writing a story about it for Cronkite News in December of 2024, which was honestly one of my favorite stories outside of basketball, and it speaks to the type of the winning culture Graham Rossini wants to bring in Tempe for sure. And then the next big money hire was, it's been a year since Molly Miller has taken over the women's basketball program, and I do have to say, seeing it blossom from a year ago today to now has been pretty impressive. So it's just a beginning for this program, and I'm really excited to see where it will continue to go for years to come as well.
Well, and so, again, we don't know if it's going to be Bennett. We don't know, but we think. If it's not Bennett, though, a few different candidates that some people had on their radar have gone off the board to other jobs by this point. But if it's not Randy Bennett, who I'm going to put everyone on the spot. We're going to go around the table.
Steve Nash.
Who's Steve Nash?
I'm just
Go
making
for
it
it.
like a
Tell us
dream
why.
scenario,
Give me the
mind
pitch.
you, because like I just saw a post where Steve Nash is at tonight's Suns game against the Raptors, and I just randomly think, what if he comes into a crossover from Phoenix to Tempe and then just bringing in winning culture as he has instilled in the Suns back in the 2000s? So it could be possible, but I'm just making it like his dreams.
He does have coaching experience. I mean, he's 94 and 67 as an NBA coach with Brooklyn.
Literally, one of the things that I vividly remember about Steve Nash was in 2022, days before he got fired from Brooklyn, he got ejected in a game against Milwaukee, and he appeared to be upset at the officials.
Well, and here's the other thing. His first year in Brooklyn, guess who was on the Brooklyn Nets roster?
Kevin Durant.
And also James Harden. ASU, obviously ASU alum and potentially mega donor.
I'll stick with-
Who do you want? Putting you on the spot. Give me a name.
I'm gonna one name that's really standing out to me, Eric Olin from New Mexico, and I'm leaning into this one because there's a close tie with Graham Rossini, both dating back to their days in Mobile, Alabama. I think that's a factor that will lend itself well if Bennett eventually ultimately does not come to ASU. I think that the connection that Olin and Rossini have will be a strong selling point to ultimately to try and land him.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with the NBA. I'll stick with the NBA theme here and go with another hot take name, Byron Scott.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
I thought you were gonna tell me like a current NBA coach, or at least somebody that coached in the NBA in the last decade.
I mean, I'm only going with this just because he has that quote out there of like rekindling the glory days of the program. I mean, if you put him and James Harden's resources together, who knows what happens? I mean, Scott may not work out well when it comes to like the recruiting trail, just because he may not be able to navigate the modern game very well. But I mean, James Harden at least would work on the NIL front and at least have resources for if Graham Rossini brings in a GM or something for the team to work out the financials, whereas Scott sticks to the pure basketball side of things.
So here's my challenge to you, Austin, since you brought him up. So Scott's a year older than Bennett, has not coached in college, hasn't coached at all since the 2015-16 season when he was with the Lakers. He went 17-65 that year. Make me feel better about that.
Well, college is a whole lot different than in the NBA, and I feel like there's a little bit more opportunity for him to command respect from younger players who at least would know his NBA days, or at least be aware of him being somewhat a legend of the game.
This is sounding a lot like when Herm Edwards was hired.
I was about to call that out.
It very well could be, but
YOLO.
if you can't land Randy Bennett, I mean...
All right,
Okay.
Andrew, Austin lowered the bar for you a little bit there. Again, all due respect to Byron Scott. He's a legendary ASU player, had a long NBA coaching career. But Andrew, give me your name.
I have no clue if this is feasible or not, but I like the idea. Bryce Drew. He's taken Grand Canyon to another level. If you can somehow go 2 for 2 in poaching the basketball coaches in back-to-back years, that would be a great storyline. Crosstown rival, build the rivalry up a little bit. He didn't take GCU to the tournament this year, but in the past they've made the tournament. They've done well under him. If you can go get him, why not? I believe he's a younger guy in age, which is something I've said that I like. He's born. He's 51. He's not young, but he's not ancient either, which it gets you what you want to an extent, but it's just and it would be an interesting shout if they went that way.
Do we want the GCU trolls to just accuse us of being GCU East for our basketball programs?
Are there even GCU trolls?
Plenty of them, considering that that they consider us a crosstown rival.
There.
They're out there. The issue I have with the Bryce Drew idea, because like Andrew, a lot of what you're saying makes a lot of sense. The only issue I have is Bryce Drew's brother coaches at Baylor, and I think for that reason, probably now I don't know Bryce Drew personally, but I think for that reason that idea would be dead in the water. I just don't think that he wants to coach against his brother each year for the same reason that Sean Miller and Archie Miller never coached in the same conference, for the same reason Bobby Hurley isn't going to coach in the same conference as Dan Hurley. I don't think you see that a whole lot, at least with brothers who still talk to each other. Maybe if they had a falling out, then it could be different. That would be fun. But I think the idea is spot on. If we weren't in the Big 12, there might be more traction there. But I feel like that would prevent us from going 2 for 2 with GCU hires.
Personally, if I would want to coach against my brother if we were both coaching in the in college basketball, but I also don't have a brother, so
Well, there you go.
can't say I relate.
I'll give my hot take. The one name I will say honestly, my backup option would be Eric Olin. Like Tom said, I think he's a really good coach. I think he's a really good rising star. I don't know if he's actually willing to leave New Mexico after just 1 year, but Also, that you mentioned that he and Rossini are both from Mobile, Alabama. They grew up together to some degree, and but also the athletic director that hired Olin just left for Colorado. The university president is retiring, I believe, in May. So the leadership team that just brought him in, they're gone. And it would make perfect sense to me if Olin said, "Well, I want out. I want somewhere where the people who I work for are the people who actually said they want me here." Now that since you already took him, I won't say that that's my second option. So I will go to the other option that I am at least somewhat intrigued by, which is the one that's been floated a lot, which is Derek Glasser, the former point guard who played alongside James Harden, and of course it's been reported by many. If he were to be the head coach, James Harden is going to significantly increase the money that he's donating to ASU basketball. That Derek Glasser would, use his connections to bring in a bunch of very experienced, very seasoned coaches to be his assistants, and essentially assemble a team of rivals on that coaching staff. Since he is fairly young, fairly inexperienced, I like the idea because it's appealing from the NIL aspect. Derek Glasser is somebody who, back when he played at ASU, as the point guard, as somebody who was very much like a distributor, a playmaker, he had to have a certain level of leadership. He had to have a certain level of basketball IQ. He's in charge of the offense at UC Santa Barbara now. And again, it goes towards that hiring a young guy with local ties kind of MO. And also the thing that really I find the most appealing is before he got into coaching, he was also an agent for players and coaches in the NBA. And I think that's such a unique background to have in the NIL day, where you're you're negotiating deals to an extent. I know NCAA, they don't actually negotiate deals. Nobody pays for play. But in this world where universities can now directly pay players, people jump in the transfer portal and they're looking for the best offer sometimes. Having a coach who's actually negotiated deals like that is, I think, that's very unique. And I think that could be a real asset to have. Now, again, Randy Bennett has been my top choice since the moment the job came open, from a year ago when the job didn't come open and we all kind of knew it was going to come open now. So Randy Bennett is definitely who I would have as my top guy. It sounds like it's who Arizona State has as their top guy as well. But I can't lie, the idea of Derek Glasser being the head coach, with everything we've heard about it, sounds very intriguing to me.
Lots of options available, that's for sure. Lots of speculation, we should say.
Lots of speculation, and we'll find out soon enough if we haven't already found out by the time this episode goes live. But it would be classic. Just classic timing if that's how it goes. But of course, that's where the men's basketball team is right now. And like we mentioned a little bit while talking about this, the shadow of what women's basketball just completed also hangs over it of how quickly Molly Miller was able to turn things around. And it was I know you touched on it, the way that their season ended in the tournament, but it was devastating to watch, especially the way that they lost that game. But again, the fact that they were even there in the tournament, it's such a bright future for this program. And, I know there's 4 seniors going out on this team, but they're still returning a good chunk of players. Molly Miller has shown in the past
And they're also
a level of adeptness for the portal. So what does it look like for next
I
year?
apologize for interrupting while you're speaking in the middle of it. When I mentioned about the addition of transfer guard Ruby Whitehorn, which I talked to Molly Miller about a few days ago, and she said that she has been around a team like soaking it all in Tempe, which is obviously pretty cool. And it also gives Whitehorn a fresh start in a new program as well, especially after what she had to go through in Tennessee this past year. And for the Sun Devils women's basketball, they're also bringing in 3 high school Sanders Avery Lower. She is a dynamic 3-point shooter, which has really stood out to me. And London Parker, I gotta say, I'm excited to see what these 3 three upcoming freshmen will bring to the Sun Devils women's basketball this next season as well. But back to the first four matchup against Virginia, props to the Virginia for giving them a hell of a fight, I gotta say. I mean, like, what led to Sun Devils to lose the game is in the first quarter, Luisa Carrera, who has been a standout in Molly Miller's first year, she definitely got into foul trouble. So did Marley Washington, and they did speak a little bit about the foul discrepancy, which they got. They got 21 fouls compared to the Cavaliers 9, which is like obviously like now looking back at the stat sheets, it was pretty interesting to see if they didn't get into foul trouble, then there could have been a different outcome. Like Sun Devils winning, they could have been playing in the round of 64, and they could have won over Georgia and basically advanced to the round of 32. But this Sun Devils women's basketball, how they navigated with this whole group and especially three returning players, actually won with Jaya Levette from last season. It definitely speaks to a lot of volume and how Molly Miller has envisioned this winning culture that she wants to bring over to Tempe as well. And I mean, like in the final minutes of the fourth quarter, mind you, it's really entertaining. And once Marley Washington made that game-tying three-pointer, it was about to be a fight until the final buzzer, basically. And then once Kimora Johnson hit the dagger, which is a three-pointer, and then she scored the last 4 points, and the Sun Devils basically had a chance to tie the game, in which the Cavaliers, they had a great wall of China defense over there, and they didn't have a chance to score. So that led to Sun Devils losing to that game. But win or lose, they kept their heads held high. And how Molly Miller brought in this type of people, from coaching staff to players, that want to win and play in Tempe and build a community that will last for years to come, is ultimately pretty special. And I'm excited to see what Molly Miller will have in store for the next season.
Yeah, and I mean the game, the game itself, like you kind of touched on it in that first quarter, especially. There two players got into early foul trouble, but also they looked disjointed on offense. It looked like in general they got off to a slow start in the game, and with the way that they finished, they were really firing on all cylinders in the second half. But I think if they came out playing a little bit stronger, they win that
Definitely,
game.
for sure.
McKenna Brackens had an especially tough game. Had a lot of missed shots that she doesn't normally miss. She just it's unfortunate to see a player of her caliber have that moment to have a bad night. But it definitely felt more like a game where ASU lost versus Virginia
For
won.
sure.
And I think that's also encouraging going forward. Is one, the fact that they were even there in the first place, but two, like they didn't play their best and they came incredibly close to winning
That's really
and moving on to the
impressive
next
for her.
round.
And to
So-
add in Gabby Elliott, which Elliott has been a go-to scorer throughout the whole season. Which how she went out quiet, respect to Gabby Elliott for the type of career she has had. Playing for 4 different schools and landing in the final season with Arizona State. I'm excited to see where she is headed. I could see her getting drafted by a WNBA team who needs a backup guard or a guard who can have the opportunity to play minutes off the bench. Like, I'm really excited to see where Gabby Elliott is headed. Shout out Erica Day, a podcast host for PHNX Wildcats and especially for the Mercury. She's done such great things on the podcasting side, and I'm really inspired by her work ethic and her yapping as well. And basically, I definitely agree with how Erica has pointed out about Gabby Elliott becoming one of the prospects to watch for this year's WNBA draft, which will take place next month.
Yeah,
I think for me, two factors that led to the loss on Thursday more so than simply the foul trouble was turnovers, 16 turnovers that led to 12 points for Virginia, and then the inability to control rebounds on defense, especially in the second half. Virginia recorded 11 offensive rebounds. Now, granted, over the entire game, only 5 second chance points, but especially in the second half, that just bled the clock down at a time when the Sun Devils needed every second to be able to press their advantage that they were building momentum, but just the inability to control those defensive rebounds really just milked the clock away.
Yeah, the lack of rebounding was very frustrating to watch, especially because ASU's been such a good rebounding team most of the year, and it's almost like Virginia just went into like the league settings and turned the slider down for defensive rebounding and cranked it up for user offensive rebounding. It was so frustrating to watch because it's not what we've come to see out of this team. Even in the games that they've lost, that's not been what got them in trouble in those games. So all in all, it felt like it was very uncharacteristic of the team in some of the ways that they lost, because typically they don't turn it over that much. They don't give up offensive rebounds like that. They do tend to get in foul trouble. Physical team, they're an aggressive team. They play hard defense. But it felt, again, like I said, it felt like they didn't have their A game. And again, they came so close to winning even with that. So definitely a lot of optimism around this program. Molly Miller, without question, in year one has activated the Valley, which brings us into the next segment of Activate the Valley. The one who actually coined the term, Kenny Dillingham, is back in business with spring football, getting started back up. Andrew, you were there, and I thought your one key takeaway regarding the temperature was very apt.
It was hot. It was, simply put, the players were talking about it, how like a lot of the transfers, like, man, they weren't expecting it. Even the returners were like, wow, this is hot. And everyone starting to get used to it. It come late August time, it's gonna be an advantage for Arizona State in those warm weather games, because Arizona is gonna be hot, and Tempe, it's gonna be warm. Morgan State's one of the first few teams coming in. They're coming in from the north. It's gonna be a struggle for them, and you're gonna beat FCS teams 99.5 times out of 100 at home, I would imagine.
Don't tell that to Michigan against Appalachian State.
That's on the half times, but more often than not, you're going to win those games, and then it'll get you an advantage for some of these other non-conference games. You got Kansas, and that's on London on the week 3, throwing things away. Way out of order from what normally it is. I believe the next game's Baylor at home, if memory serves me correctly.
And I think that's not until either the last weekend of September or the first weekend of October. It's a very light front end schedule. For the fans at least will be a welcome sight to not have all the games in 100-degree weather. But then when you think about it, having only a very light front end of the home schedule, you're having to wait more for that opportunity to be in the stadium.
Yeah, you've got the week 5 game of Baylor's the second home game of the season. That, like you said, Tom, that's October 3rd, and then you got October 10th against Hawaii, which those are still going to be warmer games, but I don't think we'll see. We might see triple digits, we might not. I don't know. Could be, because it's Arizona, and I guess we're getting triple digits in March now. But yeah, it was hot. Everything, but in terms of, besides the heat, the team looked solid in practice. You can only see so much. What was it? There's 2 key players that stood out for me. Nick McClarty, the punter, he can punt a ways. I can confirm that. That's something that ASU struggled with last year. He was punting.
He's a big dude too.
Yeah, 6'7". I don't know his weight, but
he's like 250 pounds or something.
Big boy. He was punting 40 plus yards consistency, getting in the 50 range pretty consistently of where a line of scrimmage would be. And Marion Miller was catching the balls with one hand, outraised. Caught one by doing this. He caught a few others that were T-bobbled. but the, what I saw from McClarty was something I didn't see much from last year. So that was the big difference for me.
So Miller's got the Odell Beckham Jr. catch
For sure.
down.
I was also there.
Yeah.
Hopefully, unlike Odell Beckham Jr., when he makes a one-handed catch, it actually comes in a win. Right, Austin?
He might be making a return to the Giants here in a little bit. So he looks like he's still got it. If you watched him at the flag football game in Los Angeles.
Interesting to note. So I do have to add in, I apologize for the interruptions a little bit, but I was also at the first 2 days of the spring football practices as well, and what has really stood out to me is Amari Miller, in which I did interview Dillingham after day 2 about what has stood out to him about Miller's work ethic, and he said that he doesn't play as fast as he is, which is a good thing. He's always under control, and that's what really stands out to me from day two, the first 2 days of spring football as well, which I'm pretty excited to see how it will all turn out. But the big question, but also to add in, Dillingham also pointed out in day 1 that this is the big and athletic roster he has ever seen, in which it's pretty interesting for me to point this out as well. And I'm so fascinated to see how it will all translate into the football season. But the big question that I have is how they're navigating finding the right starter for the quarterback, as long as they basically stay healthy, and that's what all matters for the Sun Devils throughout the season.
Yeah, if Cutter Boley can come in and take advantage of all the potential that he has, it could be a really big year. Again, also, I think it was a smart move bringing in Mikey Keene, who has a pretty high floor as a college football starter. Have we gotten any clarity on the offensive play calling situation? If Kenny Dillingham will call plays the way he did in the bowl game, or if Marcus Arroyo will return to that setup?
I believe in his Tuesday 45-plus minute long press conference, Kenny's at near the end, I want to say it was, I would guess around the 39-minute mark, he said something about it where it's going to be Arroyo primarily. It was kind of a non-answer, though, if memory serves me right. Which I'm trying to find that quote.
While Andrew's looking at that, I'm gonna echo the excitement about the wide receiver room. Not only Amari Miller, but Reed Harris, Uriah Nellums. It's a very deep wide receiver room, and again, like at the quarterback position, comes down to can these guys stay healthy to be able to produce to the highest potential they have. But it's a very, very high ceiling that this wide receiver room brings to the new season.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I also really hope, and this is half tongue-in-cheek, but with Nick McLarty and the punter, with the size he has, we know Jack Nudo, the new special teams coordinator, he's talked in the past, and he's done it as interim coordinator last year. He likes to come up with some trick plays here and there. I want a punter draw play.
Yeah,
where you give it to McLarty, just have him barrel downfield straight up the gut, and it'll be like that scene from The Longest Yard where the guy is just carrying 5 guys on him as he rumbles forward. And I think that you might be able to get that.
Make it a fullback dive, but with your punter.
Yeah. So I don't know. Andrew, if you want to slip that note to Coach Nudo next time you see him, you can sign it on all our behalf.
If next time I'll ask him a question about if that's something that he might have in the playbook. But I do want to mention what Tom says. I'm still trying to find this quote. It's taken me a bit longer than I thought it was. Is that people want to come and play under Hines Ward. Let's not forget he was a Super Bowl winning wide receiver, and he's done a lot. Was on the Sunday Night Football preview show for a little bit too. He's a guy who knows a lot. Coached Jordan Tyson up to be the success he was, and now there's definitely people who want to come in to play under a guy who's done so much in his career.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have somebody like him, especially seeing the success Jordan Tyson had. and this is easily their deepest wide receiver room that they've had since Kenny Dillingham got here. So it's very, very exciting, and I'm just, spring ball is always tough for me because it's like you get a little taste of it, but then we still got to wait so many more months until we get there.
Yeah, here's what Kenny said, kind of summed up, is that he wants to be more involved on the offensive side, especially with spring football. He's probably going to be more involved, but he also says that doesn't change Marcus's role, and that they worked well together at a high rate. He says he wants to run around a little bit more, be a little bit more engaged, be a little bit more involved in those meetings, but nothing really explicitly one way or the other.
Almost sounds like we'll find out week 1 against Morgan State.
Yeah. A couple of interesting guys who were on the team last year that are coming into the wide receiver room. Clayton Smith. He's practicing in an offensive jersey, which is interesting.
Edge rusher Clayton Smith.
Yes. He's now going on the offensive side, which it's interesting how they're going to try to fit him into the offense, which if they want to use him as a wide receiver, like you said, David, Ward and company brought in a bunch of transfers, as well as a couple other guys that are on the team like Jalen Moss. Tight end side, you've got Kamari Anderson and AJE already in there. It's like, where do you want to piece together that? And moving in from the quarterback room to the wide receiver room is Michael Tollefson, Butter Tollefson. An interesting note to see if he's going to get in there, crack get some playing time with other guys like Derek Eusebio still on the team. He changed his number. That's weird for me to see. He's 5 now. So just new faces, new names, old names, different places. A lot of moving pieces in the offense with not a lot of returners.
Yeah, well, before I have to learn all the different new numbers and which names they go to, the thing that I'm probably most intrigued by is that play calling role and how that evolves, whether it's Kenny calling the plays or Arroyo still calling the plays, but Kenny is kind of in his ear. Whatever it ends up being, I'm going to be following that pretty closely. A lot of people really liked what they saw when Dillingham was calling the plays in that bowl game. But we may also still get a chance to see if Marcus Arroyo can kind of get his fastball back, so to speak. And speaking of fastball, we want to pivot. We want to pivot to, of course, Sun Devil baseball, the sport that's actually going on right now. Basketball's wrapping up, football's getting ready to begin. Baseball we're in the thick of it, and looks like we got a pretty good team, right? Like
yeah.
they're doing pretty good to start.
2-1 these first 2 conference series now in terms of record, which is what you want to see. You got the last 2 midweeks you had wins over your in-state schools, Arizona, GCU now. Which if you're Bloomquist, you're feeling good, but you're not there yet. There's still things you want to clean up. Alex Overbay in the starting role hasn't been super impressive. Cole Klecker didn't pitch well today, which you're going to have off days, but you're going to want to limit those few and far between. In absence of New Contradas, who's been out with an injury, he's been able to swing the bat now at least, but not really run. So you've had a couple different guys out there at second who have kind of not done much, and Finn Leach from his first 2 starts and Beckett Zavorik. Those are kind of the 2 biggest holes right now, is starting pitching outside of the 2 Coles and second base.
Yeah, it's really the bright spot that I'm gonna bring up is just the beat going on for Landon Hairston. I mean, he has been all but unstoppable at the plate and just tearing the cover off the ball, game in, game out. He is the straw that stirs the drink for the Sun Devil baseball team, and it's given me the feeling that as he goes, this team will go. So the longer that Landon keeps raking at the plate, the farther this team's going to go.
Yeah,
His
I think-
powers came a long way.
I think what's been most encouraging to me so far is just the number of options that they have in the bullpen too, because that was always a concern the last few years. And of course, Wyatt Halverson has an injury; he's out for the rest of the year. That's a big blow to their depth, but they do still have a lot of different guys that they can go to. We've seen a few times already this year where they've gotten into games where, we know the offense can be explosive. We know that Harrison and everybody else, they can go off for double-digit runs any given night. I think I was just looking through their schedule. They put up 29 against Loyola Marymount earlier this month. 29 in one game, by the way, not 29 across the series. They won 29-4. But even in the games where their offense isn't doing what it normally does, or if they're in a ballpark that's not as conducive to just knocking it out of the park, their pitching has been able to keep them in the game. And there were so many times last year at this point in the season even where it was like our offense either shows up or we lose. We can win shootouts or we can blow teams out, but we're not going to be able to win those rubber matches. And we've gotten into a few, and it's still not to a point where I'm not booking my tickets to Omaha just yet, but it's been a lot more encouraging. There's been games against TCU, against Kansas State this past Friday, where you have to rely on your pitching just a little bit more, and they last just a little bit longer than they did last year, than they did the year before. And, again, you get into the dog days of the season and you see how well they actually hold up down the stretch. But I really like the way that Willie Bloomquist attacked this offseason to give himself not just quality pitchers here and there, but to just fill up his arsenal there. And that's really what I was most looking to see early on. And so far, again, it's early, but so far I've been really impressed.
Well, and David, you bring up the depth of the bullpen. I want to give my early hat in the ring for bullpen MVP to Sean Fitzpatrick. Last season was a very forgettable season for him. ERA of over 11. He was really a project pitcher for Coach Bloomquist, and really refined his craft in the offseason, and has aside from this series against Kansas State, he did not give up an earned run until this weekend's series, giving up one run in each of the last few games. But outside of that, he's just been a shutdown pitcher, somebody who, and I asked Coach Bloomquist about this a couple weeks ago, somebody that he is comfortable giving the ball to in any situation out of the bullpen and saying, here you go, pitch. We saw it with a career-long three innings against Arizona in the midweek game 2 weeks ago. He's taken every situation that Coach Bloomquist has given him and just run with it, and really just been the driver out there in the bullpen.
Yeah, in addition to Fitzpatrick, who's had an outstanding bounce back year, as you mentioned, Tom. A couple other guys have caught my eye. Taylor Penn, transfer sophomore from Western Kentucky, pitched really well so far with a 2.04 ERA. With 3 wins, he's been a reliable arm. I didn't think was going to be the most reliable coming into the year. I thought he was going to be serviceable, but he's been reliable, which is a step better. Derek Schaefer, the closer, a guy who I was high on coming into this year as a potential start. He's been a great piece, junior in the back end of the bullpen. Colby Guy, who's been a starter in the past before having an injury early in his last season in UNC Asheville, I want to say. He was the Big South preseason pitcher of the year last year. Transfers in Arizona State. Has put up some good numbers so far this season. Pitched really well Tuesday in the midweek. And then the other guy, Josh Butler, on the team was one of the better bullpen guys last year. Going to continue that into this year, it looks like.
And in a coming into the season where I believe you brought up the point that that Coach Bloomquist was a little bit non-committal on which guy and which arms are going to be slotted into which roles, and we knew that Cole Carlone was going to be the Friday starter coming into this season. But I think outside of that, there was no real firm commitment to where guys would land. You bring up Cole Klecker, again, a rough outing for him today. Like you said, we're gonna have guys are gonna have those games. Hopefully, minimize them and have them fewer and farther between as the season goes on. But he's another guy that I've been really impressed with since transferring in from TCU, and had his best outing of the season last Sunday in his start against TCU, throwing 7 shutout innings.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, it's still, we're kind of early into the year, but looking at the Big 12 standings so far after 2 Big 12 series, Arizona State's 4-2. That right now ties them for third in the Big 12. Only teams ahead of them are UCF and West Virginia, both at 5-1. And as luck would have it, West Virginia is the next Big 12 team that's on their schedule. They'll play out in Phoenix this weekend. ASU draws UNLV Monday night in Vegas, and then they come home for a quick game against New Mexico State before hosting the Mountaineers. Really ample opportunity early on to face one of the teams that's kind of hot coming out of the gate in the Big 12. And again, going back to their non-conference portion where they had that series against Oklahoma, which ultimately went their way. They didn't get the full sweep, but they won the series. And then the 3 straight games, which they did lose all 3, but against 3 different top 25 teams. I think that was a really good scheduling tactic to prepare them to the point where now we're going into face a West Virginia team that's right now one of the best in the Big 12. And you got to feel good about at least where their mental state is, their preparedness for a team like that. So it's lining up early on for Arizona State to be able to set themselves apart as one of the teams to beat in the Big 12.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead and look at that West Virginia team. I'm very curious on how this midweek against UNLV is going to play out. Traveling from Kansas to UNLV, back-to-back days, interesting scheduling, different. ASU lost this game at UNLV last year. I think one of the difference makers for UNLV side was Dean Toigo. And now ASU has Dean Toigo, and Dean Toigo is swinging a really hot bat. He's homered a lot. I think it's like 8 times in his last 9 games, something ridiculous. He has 11 homers this season, an OPS of 1,100 plus, while only batting .326, which I say only. That's still a pretty high number at the end of the day. Just he's found his stride as of late, swinging a really hot bat, and that's a guy you want who, in a smaller ballpark like Municipal Stadium where the ball flies, is going to hit a lot of home runs. You need that bat to be hot.
And that's a tough tandem to face with when you've got Landon Harrison usually up there at the top of the order, and then farther down the order you've got Dean Toigo. Their opposing pitchers are going to have nightmares going up against a lineup like that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
And then you pencil in other guys like your PJ Moutsaritis of the world that are batting .315 in the second slot. Dominic Smaldino, .333 with a .950 OPS. Garrett Michelle, .317 with a .976 OPS. Your catchers this season have done really well as well. Briggs and Cohen Nikolai batting over .300 each. Austin Rolig, .360 right now. There's a lot of challenging pieces to face in this lineup right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned Briggs, and I can't help but root for the guy, not only because he's a Sun Devil, but he also hails from out here in Oklahoma in the Tulsa area. And there's a small contingent of people out here that are now de facto Sun Devil fans because specifically they're following Brody Briggs. So that's been a cool thing for me personally, is getting some newfound Sun Devil fans. And I'll have to get them some basketball gear in addition to Andrew and Tom some basketball gear, because we love, obviously, all things Arizona State athletics, whether it's basketball, baseball, tennis, volleyball, hockey, football. We can take it or leave it, of course. We obviously we love seeing the Sun Devils win, and baseball is doing a really good job of it right now. Future looks bright for men's and women's basketball, pending a certain hire that may or may not happen. But of course, as always, we'll have all of the coverage on all things Arizona State athletics right here at Echo from the Butte. You can also read all of us talking all about it at devilsindetail.com. And on the next episode, I may or may not be wearing my Tequila Sunrise shirt because that will be one of their special days in this upcoming series against West Virginia. Another one of those shirts that I got for free because of how savvy I was as a college student back in the day. But that's just a fun teaser for the next episode. Until then, signing off for Tom Harden, Austin Bundy, Andrew Hazlett, and Aya Abdeen, I'm David Howman here at Echo from the Buttes. As always, give 'em hell, Devils.